What's up, everybody? John here, and today we are going to be doing part one of a series on Fusion 360 basics. And quite honestly, what better place to start than with the user interface itself? I mean, you got to know where everything's at in order to make proper use of it, right? So, what I want to do is show you 5 key areas of the user interface that you're going to likely interact with on every design that you create, and I want to show you why they're important and how to use each one of them so that you have a proper understanding of just how to navigate that user interface before you jump right in. And let's get started. So here is how Fusion 360 looks when it's opened up to a new design. And the 5 areas we want to talk about are the design space, the toolbar, the browser pane, the view cube, and your timeline and navigation tools. So let's take a look at the design space first, since it is probably the most self-explanatory. The design space is where your sketches, bodies, components, and other design elements are going to be visibly accessible to you. It's where you'll create sketches, form bodies, create new components, and have a visual representation of the thing that you're designing. It's really pretty self-explanatory, but you're going to interact with it literally on every design. Next up, we have the toolbar. The toolbar is where all of your tools exist. And the first thing I want to talk about in the toolbar is this design selection area right here. Now, this is actually a workspace selection. So if I click the drop down, it's going to allow me to choose different workspaces. So right now I'm in the design workspace. It's the workspace that I would use to actually design my thing. If I change this to render, it's going to take me into a workspace that's going to allow me to create photorealistic renderings. If I go to animation, it's going to take me to an animation workspace, and so on and so forth. For now, I'm going to go back to the design workspace. As we move further to the right, we have the selection of tools available to us to manipulate our project. So I have different menus up here for solid, surface, sheet metal, and then a tools selection as well. So the things that I want you to take away from this video are not so much how to use the different tools. We'll go over that in some later videos. What I want you to take away is how to manipulate this toolbar. It's very intuitive. So let's say under the Create tab here, there is a drop-down menu where I can select a different tool to use. So let's say that I wanted to create a loft. I would click on the loft tool right here. Now you'll see that some of these have letters next to them. Extrude has an E. That means that if I push the E key on my keyboard in my design space, that it will automatically enter the extrude command. Same thing with hole for H, and then you'll see over on modify, I have the press pull command set to Q, fillet to F, and so on and so forth. I can change these if I want to. So this little 3-button tab over here next to revolve, for example, if I click on that, I can pin that to my shortcuts, and I can change the keyboard shortcut by assigning a key. All I have to do is press which key I want and hit OK, and it'll allow me to change that shortcut. If I want to reset it back to its original default, which in this case was nothing, then I would click Reset to Default. In this case, I'm just going to hit cancel. If I want to manipulate these tools up here because I use certain ones more than others, like let's say create form, let's say I don't use that very often, just click, hold, drag off, and drop it, and it's going to get rid of it. If you want to add something in its place, you would click your drop down menu, and let's say that I use new component very often. I'll click on these little circles here and say pin to toolbar, and now I've got new component up in the top. All right, and third we have the browser pane. Now the browser pane is on the far left of our screen here, and it is essentially a hierarchy of everything that exists within our current design. So my current design is Pole Slider V1, and everything within that design is in this drop down menu right here. If I click this arrow, it's going to lump it all back up into Pole Slider. But for now, I want to look at these. So within my browser pane, I have different things that I have access to. So under document settings, in this case, all I have access to is going to be units. I can change this to millimeters or whatever it might be depending on what I'm actually designing. You also have a list of your named views. So top, front, right, and home in my case. You can create custom named views. We'll go over that later. But if I click top, let's say, it's going to take me to my top view. If I click front, it's going to take me to my front view. For now, I want to stay home, so I'm going to click the home view, and it's going to take me back to this nice view right here. It also gives you a list of your origins, your joints if you have any. Joints is something we'll get into in a later video as well. A list of all your sketches. The thing I want to point out here on sketches is that this little padlock right here means that a sketch is fully constrained. We'll talk about sketch constraints later. But it is a good thing to have a padlock next to your sketches. You'll notice that each one of these also has a little eyeball next to it. That eyeball, if it is not grayed out and does not have a slash through it, means that that is currently visible. So you'll see here, sketch 1 is not visible. I can make it visible by clicking on the eyeball, or I can make it not visible by clicking on it again. And I can do this with sketches. I can do this with components. So you'll see here I have 3 components. They're all generic. Component 1, component 2, component 3. And you'll see that each of them was highlighted as I moved over them. You can click the eyeballs on these to make them disappear. So if you don't want to see certain components, don't want to be distracted by them, whatever it might be, you can click those to make them invisible or inactive. The last thing I want to point out here within this browser pane is that as I highlight these, there is a radial that pops up next to them. If I click on that radial, it makes that component the active component that I'm working with. So you can actually make changes to components within a design space in Fusion. It's really powerful. We'll go over that later as well. But all I want you to take away from this right now is that this radial, when you select it, means that that is the active component. One piece of advice, if you do select an active component and then let's say you want to make a change to the design itself, good advice, activate this component, which is your complete design, so that you're back within your full design as opposed to an individual component within that design. Okay, and moving right along, we're going to go to the view cube next. Now, the view cube is on the top right of our design space. It is this guy right here, and it is essentially a God's eye view of your design. And think of your design as being encapsulated within that cube, and as the God of the design, you can manipulate that cube however you want to view the design in whatever manner you choose. So the things I want to point out here is that you can click and hold on the cube and drag it to orbit. So if you want to move your design and orbit it around, you can do that. If you want to click on a specific view, let's say I want to click on right, you can do that as well. And then the arrows around the cube allow you to navigate as well. So this little arrow up top is going to allow me to rotate it in this direction. These arrows on the sides are going to allow me to rotate that design as well. Now the little house button up here, that's my home view. So if I ever want to get back to my home view, and this is the case no matter where your part is or where your design is on the screen. So let's say that it's gone. I don't have it anywhere. It's missing and I can't find it. Click that little home button. Boom, your design's back. It's never lost. Now, another thing to point out here with the view cube is that you do have a drop-down selection menu where you can click to go home. You can change the type of view that you're in from orthographic to perspective or perspective with ortho faces. I like perspective with ortho faces. It feels the most realistic to me. Play around with those. It's largely personal preference. You can change your home view if you want. So right now mine looks like this, but if I wanted to make it this right here, I could select this drop down, say set current view as home, and then I like to choose fit to view to make it as large as possible. Click that, and now this is my home view. And I'll show you that by saying, let's rotate it back over here. And I'm going to click on home view, back to this. If we don't like how that looks, you can reset your home view by just clicking reset home in that drop down menu as well. Let me go back to that. And if you find that your coordinate system here is not quite right and it did not establish top front the way that you wanted it to, you can set a current view as the front or the top so that it makes more sense to you, especially as you go to create your drawings. And finally, the timeline and navigation tools. The timeline you will find down in the bottom left of the screen right here. That's where all of these are. The timeline is a history of all of the features that you have added or changed within your current design. You can roll back the timeline if you want to by clicking and dragging here, and that is going to slowly take away the different features that you deselect. Okay. If you want to go all the way back to the beginning, you can click on these navigation tools over here. If you want to play through your timeline, you can click the play button and it will play through how that design was created. You'll see that it's even showing my joints. If you want to go through them one by one, you have the tool to navigate through that as well. I'm just going to click this button right here to go all the way to the end so that we're back in our home view. Now your navigation tools, they sit right here below your design space or at the bottom of your design space. You'll notice that I was using a tool to orbit earlier. I'm shift and clicking my mouse wheel to do that. So I'm holding shift, click my mouse wheel, and I can orbit this part however I want. But you'll notice that it also highlighted it down here. So if I want to orbit without doing that, I can just click orbit and use my left click to do that. All right, and you also have some other viewing options down here. You have the look at tool. So if you wanted to look at a certain face here, you can click the look at tool, select your face, and it'll give you that face straight on. You also have the pan tool. You can click that. Left click is going to allow you to drag your design around wherever you want. And then you have some zoom and zoom window tools. So if you wanted to zoom over a certain part, you could click here, drag, and it's going to zoom you in on the part that you select using the zoom window tool. What I really want to point out here is that you have the ability to change your display settings, and there's a lot of stuff here. I recommend going through them one by one. I just want you to know that they're here because a lot of these are personal preference or design oriented. So you can change your visual style to from shaded to shaded with hidden edges. You'll see what that does there. You can change it to wireframe if you want. Kind of a nice, cool little view there. I'm going to go back to shaded. That's what I prefer to work in. Mesh display environment will allow you to change your actual design space environment. You can change your effects and object visibility as well. So you'll notice here that I have like some joints that are visible right here. Let's say I wanted to get rid of those. I could go down, and mine is all the way at the bottom, but it's right here. It's kind of cutting it off. I can click on that to display or not display certain features of the design. And you also have the ability to change your camera just as you did with the view cube from orthographic to perspective or perspective with orthographic faces. You can also change your grid and snaps. Layout grid and grid settings are here. And then your viewports. So if you want to use multiple views, you can. I'll show you what that looks like here. So now you can manipulate each one of these individually. And really, those are the basics of the Fusion 360 user interface. It's really very intuitive. You just have to spend a little time working with it, and it comes packed with great features, especially for being a free software. As always, feel free to leave your comments below. Give the video a thumbs up if you felt that it was helpful, and hit that subscribe button if you want to be notified of new content that we have coming out. We are going to be doing some more tutorials like this, some very basic stuff, progressing through some of the features of Fusion 360. So if you want to get notified, hit that thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. If you want to hang out and chat with me live, go to twitch.tv/Jilkins. You'll find me there designing stuff. I also like to play games, so if you want to play a game, come by, hit the follow button, say hi. And until next time, happy designing.